Michelin. Your host for Motorweek, John Davis.
Well, hello and welcome again to Motorweek. We're glad to have you with us. Land Rover is one of the most prestigious names in the sport utility market. Its vehicles invoke images of English gentlemen farmers and hunting on the Scottish moors. But while the name is respected and its legendary off-road prowess unquestioned, on-road refinement has frequently lagged behind that of less illustrious competitors. So Land Rover set out to make its most popular SUV, the Discovery, as good at gathering groceries as it is at climbing over logs. So how genteel can the gentry's favorite sport ute now be? Well, let's put it this way. The 1999 Land Rover Discovery Series 2 with a redesigned suspension system delivers a more supple highway ride. So much so that gentry can now sip their cup of Earl Grey at speed without spilling a drop. As the Discovery's notorious pitch and roll is mostly a thing of the past. In fact, it shouldn't take more than a quick trip around the block in the Discovery Series 2 to send current owners scrambling back to the dealers to trade up. The new and improved ride is made possible by scrapping the old suspension and starting from scratch. The solid axles remain at the front and rear, but are now the same as those found on the posher Range Rover. The new Series 2 track is wider than last year's, with an increase of 2.1 inches in the front, 2.9 inches at the rear, giving this Brit SUV a far more stable stance. Longer steel radius arms and a panhard rod keep the front axle in place, while single rate coil springs, twin tube shocks, and an anti-roll bar even out the ride. The radius arms, coil springs, twin tube shocks, and anti-roll bar are also present in the rear, although the coil springs are multi-rate and a Watts linkage is used to laterally locate the rear axle. Our tester was also equipped with the optional Active Cornering Enhancement, or ACE system. Exclusive to Land Rover, this system features two hydraulic piston lever units that apply torque to the body to counter lateral movement. Replacing the anti-roll bars, these piston levers are triggered by two accelerometers, one mounted high in the body and one lower in the frame. The result is virtual elimination of all body roll up to 4 Gs, which is especially nice if you're a backseat passenger with or without that cup of tea. Changes have also been made to the Discovery's 4x4 system, but fear not, the Land Rover's legendary off-road prowess has not been compromised. Still full-time four-wheel drive, the Series 2 has replaced mechanical differential locks with a four-wheel electronic traction control system similar to the Mercedes ML. It uses brake pressure to control wheel slippage and direct torque to the wheels with the most traction. Once you get to the top of the mountain, another Land Rover exclusive, Hill Descent Control, will help you get safely to the bottom. Engaged along with low range, HDC automatically uses the wheel brakes to aid engine braking when descending steep grades, as long as there's no pressure on the accelerator. Stepping on the brake also overrides the system if an even slower descent is required. But you won't need any extra help coming to a stop on level pavement, as the four-wheel disc ABS-equipped brakes do a fine job of bringing this 4,575-pound heavyweight down from 60 and an average 125 feet. Nosedive is prominent, but pedal modulation is just right. A new electronic brake distribution system that modulates brake bias between the front and rear wheels also helps keep things in line. Propelling you up to 60 is a new generation of the Discovery's trusty 4-liter Thor V8, thus named for the new Thor induction system that sits atop the all-aluminum heads and block. And with its longer induction tracks, improves airflow at lower engine speeds, which in turn gives the torque rating a much-needed boost. It's now 251 pound-feet, up from 233, and horsepower is up from 182 to 186. The Thor V8 also uses a Bosch Motronic 521 engine management system, similar to the one found on the BMW 750 IL sedan. But in spite of all these changes, they still weren't enough to keep our power-mad drivers from screaming more power as they flogged the Discovery Series 2 down the track to 60 in a rather relaxed 10.8 seconds, and on through the quarter mile in 17.8 seconds at 77 miles per hour. There's no doubt the engine is stronger, and it pulls steadily through first and second gears of the new 4-speed electronically controlled transmission, but loses steam when it hits third, even with the accelerator to the floor. But you won't be drag racing other sport utes in the real world, and for around town cruising, which is where you'll see most Discoveries, the power band is acceptable. And its highway manners are downright pleasant. There's still a little dartiness due to the solid axles, but Land Rover has done a wonderful job of hauling its genteel heritage into the modern world. Although the smoother exterior styling is still classic Land Rover, the grille remains wide and upright, but the taillights have been raised for better visibility to those behind. The roofline is slightly lower and most body dimensions have been increased. The Series 2 is now 6.5 inches longer while the wheelbase remains at 100 inches. Inside, the makeover is more thorough and much more upmarket. The available 8-way leather-faced buckets are wider and more supportive. The super thick leather steering wheel faces a taller windshield and a new gauge cluster. The center stack now houses oversized stereo and climate controls. They're both more ergonomically friendly and easier on the eyes. A 6-disc CD changer can be mounted under the front passenger seat. Space in the Series 2 rear seats is still tight, however, and getting to them can be a struggle, as the majority of the extra body space found its way to the cargo bay behind them. There, room is up to 61.3 cubic feet, about a third larger than last year's Discovery. Now that's enough room for plenty of gear and the optional jump seats that now face forward but still fold to the sides when not in use. There's also a retractable rear step to help you climb into them. Although not in showrooms until late November, the Series 2 base price of $34,775 reflects a $350 decrease over last year's Discovery. But our heavily optioned tester still tipped the scales at a stout $45,500. While the Land Rover Discovery is a longtime favorite of the British elite, it has also carved out a significant niche among the more genteel colonials here. The many improvements in the 1999 Land Rover Discovery Series 2 only make a blue blood sport ute better, and it should become an even more common sight. Coming up, the prancing horse runs for a